Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode, we're going to take a look at the artist axis.psd, and Axis is an artist working primarily in the medium of digital rendering. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about near-symmetrical balance, we're going to talk about divinity through scale, and then we're also going to talk about the cyberpunk genre. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, you're likely going to be caught by this massive building that commands the center region of the spatial composition. You see just how much space it takes up within the spatial composition, and it really draws your eye with absolute ease. In the realm of color, we see mostly a kind of foundational blue color palette here. You see a little bit of hint of purple, and then of course a very rare gold on either side there. And this really draws the eye. The gold is a much more energetic color than, say, blue and purple, but they all really work together to catch your eye in the initial introduction. And so we see a near symmetrical spatial composition, and of course it's not perfectly symmetrical. You take a look at this, for example, you compare it to this side, that's not perfectly symmetrical, but whenever you take a look at the broader kind of contextual analysis, say in the way that it is outlined, well, that's a little inaccurate. It actually goes about right here, then it goes up. So in that context, we could totally see how this is, of course, near symmetrical. And whenever we have a near symmetrical spatial composition, it's pretty much always trying to convey a sense of balance or convey a sense of harmony. So in kind of the macro context, we see a really harmonious visual experience. Of course, a lot of energy within that, but in kind of the broader context of form, we definitely see that balance in the work at hand. And so this near symmetrical kind of spatial composition also works with the sense of scale to almost feel like we're looking at something greater than ourselves. And what I mean by that is we have this grand sense of scale within the spatial composition. Of course, it just dwarfs this kind of lone hero here, and this spatial composition, it almost feels like if we're standing, like I said, something greater than ourselves. And the reason I think that is because this grand sense of scale almost feels like it's denoting a degree of divinity, as if we're reaching a destination of really high importance. So whenever I see that work, that's really what comes to mind, and that's what I wanted to share there. And so we see a lone hero here. Of course, the silhouette of our small subject, a very small umbrella. It is raining here, so there is kind of that aesthetic there where you see almost not dust in the air, but it is kind of water droplets that really fill the spatial composition. Of course, add a little bit more to that aforementioned energy that we were talking about as well. And so the lone hero here, it's hard to say exactly who this hero is or why this hero's here or even where we are within the scene, but we see the lone hero kind of in juxtaposition against this very large structure. And that grand sense of scale really comes back. It kind of dwarfs the viewer whenever you compare them in kind of that context there. And we also see across, mythology and literature, we see a lone hero or a lone traveler come up quite a bit. And the lone traveler is the one who goes out into the unknown or goes out into the dangerous areas and hopefully kind of brings back something, defeats some type of monster, defeats some type of challenge, and then brings things back to the greater tribe or the greater group. And so in this work, it's hard exactly to draw a direct theme there, but we do see this kind of silhouette of a lone hero in juxtaposition against this massive building. And I think whenever we take a look at that, that really also reinforces that sense as if we're reaching a destination of high importance. And so we also see some pretty good examples of what I call kind of big media holograms or big media. And what I mean by that is how consumer culture is always looking for the next medium of communication to reach their viewers or to reach their customers. And what we've seen with that are both good and bad things. We see advertisements have become a lot more artistic, a lot more immersive. And then so the downside of that as well is the fact that things like artistic light and magic or even art itself is kind of being subject to consumer culture and subject to kind of short-term, monetary or materialistic expectations there. And I think that whenever we take kind of the magical elements of art and we subject it or subjugate it to consumer culture, it can lose a lot of that magic. But within this work, I see, of course, for here example, you see ACPD, an advertisement for that. It says, the best equipment for every recruit. And this, of course, is displayed on a massive screen. It's impossible to miss that. And I think that some companies, whenever they use these new types of technologies to reach their customers, Some people can kind of be preyed on in that aspect. Some people who really see, hovering purple fish as super magical, then they're going to be a lot more likely to buy the product. And this is both, a good and a bad thing. It can really kind of put a much more positive aspect on the world of advertising, but at the same time, it's also kind of appropriating art in service of materialistic or short-term greed. And so I think that's really interesting to note. That's also what I see whenever we look at this work here. And so cyberpunk art, cyberpunk is always really defined as kind of a dystopian megacity. And the dystopian megacity is normally a surveillance state, and they kind of combine these screen-based devices alongside the complete mix of the physical and the virtual world. A lot of augmented reality in cyberpunk as well. And in Cyberpunk, the line between the digital and the physical was blurred long ago. And we see kind of the individual in the Cyberpunk is really kind of written over in terms of the collective. If you're an individual in a Cyberpunk city, there's a very good chance that you're kind of going to feel lost in the herd because there's so many people. It's kind of a dystopian atmosphere. And this kind of dark aesthetic of that work really enforces that theme, and I think it goes hand in hand with the cyberpunk genre. So I hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to actually take a look at two of his pieces real quick here. And so axis.psd, I believe he made his premiere debut in April. I'm not 100% sure on that. I believe it was with the piece Ads there. And so we're going to take a quick look at some of his works here. We're going to put them side by side, see what we can learn, see what we can connect here. All right. So the first thing you notice, of course, is that cyberpunk theme. And that cyberpunk theme is always achieved through a really dark aesthetic, but kind of a contrast or a juxtaposition where the intense light of the advertisements and the screens and all of these devices is really set in juxtaposition against the night. And so, in these two works here on the right, for example, you see both subjects are standing in the rain. You see a lot of advertisements, a lot of kind of magical light coming from that. And then, say, in this work, for example, we see a very dark aesthetic, what appears to be kind of these condominiums or something like that. And the main thing that I see across these three pieces, of course, that cyberpunk genre and that dark aesthetic that's really inherent. But we also see these magical fish across each one. Of course, we have the orange fish there, the purple fish there, and then across here you have these kind of small school of about 3 blue fish there as well. And so what I see across these is that cyberpunk genre, that kind of night aesthetic, that advertising aesthetic, but also those iconic fish. And I think that axis.psd's art, if someone looks at his art quite a bit, they're going to start to know him or him or her, start to know them or their work by these kind of holographic or hologram fish. So I think that's really important whenever taking a look at work, and it really drew me in and got me to recognize this art a lot more. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys like this cyberpunk aesthetic. In this episode, we talked a little bit about near-symmetry. We talked about the dystopian atmosphere of the cyberpunk world, and then we also talked about light and magic as well as this grand sense of scale. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. Go check out axis.psd's other works. That artist is just doing a bunch of different stuff, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.